Hi, welcome back to Creature Cozy Dollhouse. Today I'm going to show you how to make some tile flooring when you don't have tile flooring. I made an incredible discovery. Now, for those of you in Canada, I went to Dollarama, and this is in the paper section. I'm just showing you a few of the samples here. I think that'll look really nice in the kitchen, and I must have bought 3 packages because I've got 6 of these sheets. Now, as in previous videos with instruction here, we're going to use the mat board technique. So I've cut a piece of mat board right here, and that is the actual dimension of the kitchen floor. So I'm going to show you a way that you can make a tile floor out of these pieces of paper and hide the seams and not know when you're looking in that they're a bunch of separate sheets of paper. Now, you don't want to just stick them together on the floor. You know, you really want to hide the seams. You want to make it look professional. So the first thing I'm going to do is take these sheets and I'm going to tape them together. I'm going to match them up, and then I'm going to tape them from behind so they're one uniform sheet. Okay, so when you're doing this, you know, this is from the dollar store. Not all the pages are the same, and they're not going to line up. Like, they're not going to go together side by side in a matching pattern. So you're going to have to do a little bit of work to really carefully line up the pattern of your paper. And then you want to put the tape on the back side of the paper if you can. Okay, so because this paper is not regular, you know, it's from the dollar store, so the pages are not going to line up, the patterns aren't going to line up. But what I'm going to try to do here, I've taken a piece of tape and I've put it so that it's on the back of the paper with the sticky side up. And I'm just going to set this paper down, and then very carefully, maybe I'm going to put another piece. I'm going to put another piece on the bottom so that when the other sheet of paper is beside it, they will stick together. Now, I'm just going to bend the paper forward a little tiny bit, and I'm going to try to get this to line up here. So right there, that looks really good. And I'm going to have to move this bottom piece a little bit, and there, I've got it. So when you've got it lined up, push it down with your fingers, and now you will have one uniform piece of tile. We're going to go one step farther in another minute or two, but what I want to do is make an assembly of these pieces of paper. So you've picked your tile pattern out of these little, it's such a great idea. These are so inexpensive. You want to make a sheet of tile paper that is larger than the piece of mat board that you've cut for the room that you're doing. So I'm just going to continue on, and I'll show you when it's done. Now, when you're matching up the tile, you're going to, take your piece of tile and have a look at the pattern that's here, and you want to try to minimize the amount of overlap that you might have. So you might spend a minute or two twisting it around. That pattern there seems to line up really well, and I don't think it's got, actually maybe even here, because you can see this pattern here matches the little bit here, and that will give me the least amount of overlap possible here. So if I set this down, now I've got to line up this edge there. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. So the trick here is that you want to put the tape on the back side with the sticky side up, and then take a minute to align your pieces, and then stick them down and run your hands over the seams over the tape. Now that this is complete, what I'm going to suggest you do now is turn it over, and you can sort of see the patch quilt here of all of the, you can sort of see the patchwork of all the pieces that I've done. But what I am going to do is take some tape, and I'm going to go over each and every seam and make sure they're pressed down good and hard. Now, there's no such thing as using too much tape for this stage of the project. You want every single seam, especially around these edges, to have, you know, at least one really good layer of tape. And then when you flip this over, there is the mat board that we're working with. And then here is the tile. Okay, I don't think it would be a bad idea to come through some of these edges that you have exposed here with a glue stick. So I'm just going to come through this edge and I'm going to bend the paper up as I go along and get a nice thick layer of the glue from the glue stick on there so that that will lie flat. Now, the good thing about this pattern is that the pattern is very busy. The busier the pattern, the better you're going to fare when you're matching up the patterns, because the pattern is so busy that you're going to have a hard time seeing the seams because the pattern of the tile itself is so involved that, you know, when the eye looks in on the dollhouse, you're really just going to see the you're going to see the pattern of the floor. I'm just going to trace it here with a pencil. Now I'm going to be cutting this using my my paper cutter because that's really, really good at giving me straight lines. But I'm also going to suggest to you when you do this that you leave a little extra on the edges. The reason I say that is because you don't know for sure, say when you were cutting the mat board, maybe there's one piece or one line on a wall that isn't quite straight. You know, there might be a little gap or a hairline gap at one side that might need a little bit of adjusting. So this is my mat board piece. I've traced it onto, let me see if that's going to work. Yeah, I've traced it down onto my pattern. And I'm going to go over to my cutting board now, and I'm going to use my paper cutter to make sure these edges are nice and square, but I am going to give myself a little bit of room on each side just in case there's been any kind of error with angles or distances in the measurement of the mat board. Okay, so I've done my basic trimming using my paper cutter. So the lines are nice and straight, they're nice and square, and this is the piece of mat board that it will be glued onto when I go to put the flooring in. The next step is to actually take this tile piece over to the room that you're going to be putting it in. In our case, it's the kitchen. We're actually going to take this tile over to the kitchen and see how it fits. Okay, so taking a peek at just the flooring itself lying down in the kitchen, I can see that it fits very nicely up against the corners. I had to make a couple of trims in this corner and in the back corner for the wood that's there. So I just wanted to double check that that fits, make up for any irregularities that may be made in the mat board. And now the next step is going to be to mount this tile that we have created to the mat board. Okay, so now that that is glued down, what I'm going to do, and simply I just used a little bit of glue, and then I dip my finger in some water and sort of spread that onto the mat board, put the tile on top of that, and now what you want to do is lay it flat and weight it down with some books and give that some time to dry. So here is the tiled floor that had set out all night to dry flat, and the next step in your process is going to be to seal that tile, because the paper, this paper from the dollar store is sort of like scrapbooking paper, so it's not water fast. If you dropped some water or moisture or something onto this paper, I think the pattern would bleed and you would lose your pattern and your floor would look yucky. So what I've done is used a gloss. Krylon is the brand of the paint that I used, and I just did a few coats of gloss paint, clear coat on top of this tile. Now, I have learned the hard way that more coats, light coats, so spray lightly and then let it dry and spray again. that beats heavy coats anytime, because heavy coats could also warp the paper. I do see a little bit of that in my paper, but what I'm going to do once it has dried is I'm going to turn it back over and weigh it down again, just to give that flattened look, and then I'll show it to you in the kitchen. And there it is. There is our custom made tile floor for what is going to be our kitchen. Secured nicely to the mat board. The mat board is put in place, and in the future I will be putting some quarter round around the edges of the room just to make it a bit more secure. But that looks pretty nice, I think. I'm pretty happy with that. The kitchen fixtures that I'll be using are primarily black and white, and I think that'll look nice in there. So my next step for this kitchen is to cut the mat board for the back wall, cut the mat board for the side wall, and then decorate them accordingly, pop them into place. Paint the quarter round that's along the ceiling here, the crown molding, paint that white. Install the door on this wall, decorate this wall as well, and then start placing the kitchen furniture in there. I'm not sure how much lighting I'm going to be adding, because my countertop unit has 2 under counter lights that I had installed in a previous video. But if you'd like to follow along and see how this kitchen is going to end up, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me along on the journey. All right, thank you for watching Creature Cozy Dollhouse.